Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so happy that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show and let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Podcasts, Addict, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, and wherever you find your favorite shows. We know that you are going to love this episode of the show. A little bit later on, Leah Cypess will be joining us to celebrate Sisters Ever After, the latest book in the Sisters Ever After series. It's called The Last Rose. But first up, we'll be speaking to Michelle Nelson-Schimdt. She has a big announcement about her own career and some insight into the world of publishing and life. You're going to love it.
You've heard the whispers. You've seen it on TV. You may have even seen the movie. Now it's time to bring Dungeons and Dragons directly to you with D&D for Hire!
More than just a game, D&D lets you step into the role of a hero you create and guide them on fantastical adventures with your friends. Perfect for beginners and experts alike, D&D for Hire is sure to delight and entertain your kids for weeks on end.
Such a fun game. There are endless possibilities. There's so many things that you can do. It's so much fun.
Our son Eli loves D&D. It's like his favorite thing to do all week.
I was like 15 when I joined. I'm 21 now. There are people who are in our party, really learn to come out of their shells.
Whether you're near or far, whether you're looking for a birthday party or a campaign to keep you adventuring for years to come, D&D for Hire has you covered. Learn more at dndforhire.com. That's dndforhire.com. D&D for Hire, bringing the adventure to you. D&D for Hire runs games digitally over Zoom or in person in select areas.
This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Becoming Strong by Anandamoy Baker. Becoming Strong is an illustrated children's chapter book about an adorable little bee named Jazzienza, who has a bent antenna and must wear glasses. She gets bullied at times, and through the sage advice of Mama Queensy Bee, the queen bee, she learns to become strong, confident, and kind. The book not only helps children learn breathing techniques to deal with anxiety, but also enables them to connect on a deeper level with nature. In addition, a clear message in the book is that we are all important and valuable, and our lives have meaning no matter our size. Becoming Strong is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read and would be a fantastic addition to any family library. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Melocene, Birds of Many Feathers. Put down your iPads, young explorers. Have you ever wondered about the mysteries hidden in your own backyard? Join Melocene on an adventure to uncover a mysterious bird right in her backyard. Look, over there. What bird could that be? On every page, meet a diverse world filled with feathered friends and neighbors. This tale is perfect for young readers aged 5 to 10, and it's not your ordinary birding adventure, but a true appreciation of biodiversity. And you know what? The adventure doesn't stop there. Melocene, Bird of Many Feathers, is an ideal companion for the Great Backyard Bird Count, which starts February 16th to 19th, 2024. Participate in this exciting event with families from around the world and bring the joy of bird watching to your home. Grab your binoculars, everyone. Melocene, Birds of Many Feathers, is available now at your favorite bookstore and online. Autographed copies and exclusive offers are available at kidawinkspublishing.com. Join us right now from Pensacola in Florida. Our guest is returning to the show, and this is going to be a very, very different episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Please welcome back our friend, Miss Michelle Nelson-Schimdt. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
I am great, Jed. How are you doing?
I am wonderful. I'm really excited to have you on. Michelle is the author of many books. We're talking about 20, 30, 40...
32.
32 books. And normally I would say that the author of this brand new children's book, but I just kind of reached out to Michelle. I said, hey, it's been a while since you've been on the show, and you always have some great stories and great advice for parents and aspiring authors and veteran authors. And why don't you come back on? And you said, yes, because this is an interesting moment in my life, and I've lots to talk about. And I thought, I can't resist this. So what's going on with Miss Michelle Nelson-Schimdt?
It's been a heartbreaking year for me. The past year has been utterly heartbreaking. And it's also been the best year of my life because I needed to learn these lessons. And I think everybody should learn this lesson because I spent years hustling hard to get my break and get my books published. And then I got my books published and I got that big break. And that's the dream. That's the story. And then I started publishing one book after another. And I was making over 6 figures. I was traveling in schools. I was making great money. I was at over 1,000 schools in 10 years. I'm like, I got the dream. I got the dream. And then the dream was gone in less than 18 months, like gone. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I started substitute teaching today as an extra job because I love being around children, but I have bills to pay. And my bank account right now is negative $181. Negative. And I am 51 years old. And you're like, how did that happen? And grateful for partnerships because my husband has been kind of towing the line on everything for a year now because I pivoted a little bit late because what happened was actually 2020 was fantastic for me because I was in a direct sales. My publisher does is direct sales, a lot of them, and I'm self-published. So my self-publishing kind of rode the wave of all these women that sell my books, and they were doing great, and they bought my books. And so I was thinking, oh, okay, I don't have all my eggs in one basket. And then you kind of realize sometimes the publishing world is one basket. No matter how you publish your books, it's still one basket. And children's publishing is, I think, in my opinion, from my experience so far, is when money starts to really get tight, children's books are a luxury to a lot of people because there's public libraries. You can go borrow books for free, and thank goodness you can because children's books are expensive. I make them, I produce them, I sell them. I do a little market every Saturday and, make just enough money selling books on Saturdays. But I'm like, my publisher royalties went down and down and down. And no matter what I did, I couldn't bump them back. And that's after 10 years of my income, just a steady rise. And you think, okay, this is it. I made it. And I'm working just as hard as I was at the beginning. I wasn't coasting by any stretch. I'm a hustler. And it was like, no matter what I did, I could not get those numbers to come back up. And, I had also, the big lesson I learned was I had attached my identity to my paycheck. I made good money, therefore I was a good person because I was, that equated like I'm good. I work hard and I deserve to make that money. And suddenly I was, still working hard. I was still hustling, but I wasn't making that money. And what does that do to your mental health is what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? How? And one has nothing to do with the other. And that was a hard lesson. I mean, I had to go through therapy for that one, to really helped me understand that I am not my bank account, and that, you know, you can be destitute, and that has absolutely nothing to do with what kind of person you are at all. And it was humbling for me to realize, because I don't think I would have told anybody else on this planet, well, you don't make money, you're not a good person. But I told myself that. And that was a huge lesson, because it wasn't my fault. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter how hard I worked, I could not get that income back. And I wrote a book last year, Life is as Magical as You Make It. And it told the truth about my story. And I didn't tell it to sell that book. I told that because it was cathartic. I signed up to substitute, and today was my first day. And I hadn't ever forgotten why I write books. Like, I never did it for the money. I needed the money. We all need money for bills. But those children, they're my heart. They will always be my heart. And whether I'm serving them through writing books or substitute teaching and helping them that way, or however, like, that is, I love serving children. That is where my heart is. But it's been a roller coaster of a year discovering that, you know, what you do in life is not who you are in life. That is not who you are. And I'm grateful for the lesson. It was a hard, painful lesson to learn, but I learned it.
You know, first off, I want to thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability. I think that this would be a very hard conversation for you to have with your best friend, let alone the millions and millions of people who listen to this podcast. Well, the thousands of people who listen to this podcast. But one of the things I've come to know about you is that you are sincere, and you've been very generous with us here on the podcast, not only celebrating your books, but also sharing insights into the publishing world and sharing advice for other authors. And so it doesn't surprise me that you are being this open and honest with everyone. This is an important lesson to tell. That whole idea that, you know, there are so many of us who are wrapped up in our, you know, who are you? Well, I'm a social worker. I'm a teacher. I'm a banker. Mm-hmm. I'm a, you know, I got into the habit of identifying myself first as a father and a husband, and then as a clown. And it was kind of hard at first, because it's just what's you know, you are your job, but it's like, no, I'm more than that. I'm more than that. And I also love that you talked about that the whole inequity of, you know, oh, you're working really hard, I deserve all this money. Well, I know there's a lot of people work a whole lot harder than I have, and I remember working a whole lot harder than I do right now when I was a teenager and up on a roof changing, you know, doing roofing in the summertime and lifting that barge and toting that bale. And I didn't make a whole lot of money, and I know there are people doing that now that don't make a whole lot of money. So I think that's important for us to keep in perspective too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your hard work does not equate your value and what you're worth and what your work is worth. It just doesn't. And that can feel wildly unfair. My husband, he is a brilliant computer guy, and he does cybersecurity and AI, and that is not, it is a very needed skill set. It comes easily to him. It's how his brain works, and he's well paid for it. And, you know, I would never say he doesn't work hard, but sometimes when I'm staying up late painting, when I'm hustling, when I'm sitting out in the cold for 6 hours selling books, I get jealous that he gets to go sit and he's an analyst. He gets paid to think about somebody's problem and give them advice. And I'm like, that must be nice.
Well, you know, and that's, I think, you know, we talk a lot about the conversations we can have with our kids when we're reading a particular book. I think what we're talking about right now is absolutely something we should be talking with our kids about on a regular basis. And it's not just money. It's because we put a lot of pressure on our kids from a very, very young age to get into that good school, get into that top-notch school. And so kids are hearing that from, I mean, there's some kids that are hearing it from preschool. And, you know, so when they get to be 17, 18 years old and their mind is not fully formed and they need to make these decisions, and it's like, oh, do I go to the state school that's giving me a full ride, but I got into Harvard and I can go there, but it's $85,000 a year, but that's the best school, so that's the choice I have to make, and then come out with owing $300,000. I think these conversations that we have with our kids about our value and we are not our degree or our job, these are real important conversations to have with our kids.
Very, yeah. And I grew up in the Northeast, and there is something about where you are, where Princeton is, you were Yale, Columbia, Harvard, Cornell, and that was all the conversations in college. Those were where all my friends were going. And that was, money-wise, that was never going to be on the table for me. And you immediately mentally kind of you feel like you're less than. Mm-hmm. And back then we were not having conversations. This is what has changed, and I'm grateful for it, is we were not talking about vocational schools. We weren't talking about trade schools. And, my daughter went to a trade school and got a degree for less than $10,000. And my son went to UGA, $100,000 degree. And she was making more money than him 6 months after she graduated. Yep. I called, and I want to say this because of your readers, your listeners. I did call. I talked to a really good, literary agent. She owns a literary agency. I won't say who she is, but I talked to her years and years ago, and she followed me on Facebook, and she's followed my career, and I followed her, and really successful literary agency. And I said, I have a couple questions. Would you mind talking to me? And she got on the phone with me a couple days ago. And I said, a lot of my rights are about to come back to me. Do you think there'd be any publisher that might be interested in my catalog? Because I was in this very specific publishing house that if you don't know about me, you don't know about me. My books have gotten kind of popular, but they're not mainstream. And I have a lot of self-publish. And I said, is that something you think a publisher, in your opinion? And what she told me just cemented, like, Michelle, let it go. And what she said was, first of all, probably. But that would be like finding a needle in a haystack. And I'm not going to say no, but publishers are interested in whatever your last sales were, and not your sales in the life of your book, what your sales last year were. And if they're not there, they're probably not interested. And the other thing that she said that really was like I had my moment. And I don't know if I'd get it back, but she said right now it is extremely hard to get published, to sell the work of white authors, because it's not our turn right now. Because we had a great run. I had a great run. But right now the industry is making space for minority writers that deserve to have that space, that didn't have it for years and years and years. And they deserve that. And it does. And she says, I have clients that their whole livelihood was based on their sales, and I can't sell any of their books right now. They're in their 60s and 70s, some of them, and they have incredible careers and lots of books. But if you have a really great book by a person of color and a really great book by a white person, that publisher is probably going to choose the person of color, because they've been ignored. They're the minority, and now they're trying to shift that. And that shift is difficult for some of us that, that we're we're the reason we have to step back to make that space because it is such a competitive industry. And so when she said that, it made me feel better about, okay, I did have a really good run. And if that's part of the reason that this is happening, or part of the reason I need to take that step back, good. If that means somebody else gets a turn that maybe wouldn't have, then I'm okay with stepping back. I'm okay with what else can I do? Who else can I be in this world besides just this definition of author and illustrator? And I thanked her for that. And I'll tell you, maybe a year ago, if I'd had that conversation, it would have been heartbreaking. But I went through all that heartbreak already. It was just one more message of right now, there's something else for you to be learning. Right now, there's something else for you. And it is a message that I'm getting pummeled with. And I was like, okay, I got it. Okay, I'm listening, and not my turn right now. And that's my interpretation. That's just my interpretation of it. And it makes me feel good about taking a step back from publishing right now. Because I can always self-publish. I mean, that's what I do. I help others. I do consulting and stuff. But I even tell them, I'm like, selling books is hard on your own. It is difficult with a publisher. It is extraordinarily difficult without a publisher. And it can cost you a lot of money to get your books out there and have people see them.
Yeah. I need to know where, because I've heard this story of, I grew up in a blue collar family, same kind of thing with you. I couldn't afford to apply to those colleges that we're talking about. Like the application fee was out of my budget.
Yeah.
But so like a lot of the firefighters and cops and then in the neighborhood and the kids like, oh, I can't get this because I'm white and blah, blah, blah. And there was a lot of bitterness. You aren't having that bitterness right now. You're stepping back and you're saying, this is good. These authors deserve it. They didn't have a chance before. And yeah, it sucks for me. It's hurting me, but let them have their, let's equal the field. Let's become more equitable. Where did you get that generosity? Where did the strength to be able to say, okay, I'm going to do something else right now? Where did that come from?
I think part of it is when you're a writer, you tend to have friends that want to be writers too. And when you get your break, there's a little bit of guilt there. And some of my friends are people of color incredible writers. And I've watched them get rejected and because of the competitiveness, and I know how good their books are. And why did I get the break I got and they didn't? And, I don't know what the exact answer is, but if part of it is, the field is saturated. I mean, if I think back on all my favorite books growing up and all my favorite children's books growing up, they're all white. Because that was, Judy Blume, Kate DiCamilla, and you just go on and on. It's white men and white women. And children, we're a diverse country, and children deserve to see themselves not just in books, but deserve to see themselves on the picture of the author on the back of the book. Not just a white woman that told the point of view of, American Indian person or an African American. Like, it deserves to be that person telling that story so that the children get to see themselves that way as well. And it just seems like I get it. Like, if I need to step back, I get that. And it's, it's kind of easier for me to say when I have this 12-year amazing career, and I've got to have that. Would I feel as generous if I still hadn't been published? And somebody, told me, a literary agent said, your book is really good, but you're white right now, and that, that is not what the industry wants. Would I, it's easy for me to say that when I've gotten to have that career that I wanted to have. And to feel like it's just easy. It's easier when you got to have what you wanted. So I don't know if, to be honest, I might be bitter and resentful, especially if I was a 28-year-old, 29-year-old. And, I got first published, and this was late by some standards. There are no standards. Nobody should believe there's any, I'm, 51. Who knows what's ahead of me? I could have a whole nother career doing something else, but I got first published at 38 years old, and I feel very lucky about that. But I compared myself to people that got, discovered in their 20s, and there's young people doing amazing things right now. And I'm like, how? But good for them. Good for them. And I guess I'm trying to not have expectations of just see what happens. And that has gotten me in this past year when I've let go of trying and let go of what I thought was supposed to be, life got easier. Yeah. Because the more I tried to make my career happen, the harder I hustled, the less and less and less I got of what I wanted. And so, and right now that's where I am. And, I'm doing my pet portraits. I'm doing substitute teaching, and there will probably be a book in there somewhere that will just have to come up, because if you're a writer, you're gonna write. Whether you get published, that's a whole different animal. That's a whole different thing. And I feel lucky that I can self-publish a book. I know how to make books. I was a graphic designer. I know how to lay it out. I know how to do everything. I have an editor to hire. So I'm not stuck not being able to write a book. I just haven't been inspired in over a year. And I became a grandma a year ago. I'm a Mimi now. And that will change everything too. Oh my gosh. I had no idea. I love my kids. I would die for my kids. But suddenly when you're a grandparent, it's a love you didn't know existed. It just is out of this world. Like, if I could do nothing but take care of my granddaughter all day long, that's what I would do. That would be my dream job right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You bring up a point that my daughter and I talked a lot about. And she was one of the kids. She was that kid who was the star of all the school musicals and the best dancer at whatever studio she was dancing at. And she would come out on tour with me. And so she spent hours and hours and hours and years on stage. And everybody assumed that that's the direction that she was going in. And in high school, she turned to me and she said, I don't want to be on stage. She had it. She had an opportunity. We we put together and produced a fundraiser to raise money to build a computer lab at an orphanage in India. And we pulled a bunch of our friends together and we did this magic show. And she enjoyed being backstage, helping everybody prepare for their moment. And she came to me and she said, I want to, and we had long discussions about it, and we talked to people who had made a similar choice. And one of the reasons that she went into the music business, and one of the reasons she made that decision not to go on stage, is that she wanted to have a long shelf life. And I think the thing that most artists don't understand, whether it's music, writing, visual art, video, whatever it is, most artists have a very, very short shelf life. That you had a 12-year career as the hot writer is wonderful. That I was able to make a living as a clown for 35 years is amazing. And that's just a reality. Anybody getting into the arts should keep that in mind.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to keep in mind, especially when it happens. And it's not to have a plan B or anything like that, but just to know that it might not be forever. So take every moment, cherish every moment. and really enjoy. And I did. I loved every minute of my career. I loved the traveling. I loved everything. And COVID sort of naturally cut my travel down. I was ready. For 10 years, I'd really, really traveled a lot. And there was a natural, like because, you only get perspective once you walk away from something, and looking back, I can see now, okay, that was the trajectory. It had gone up. I had an incredible year after COVID, and then things started to slow. And now as I step back, I realize, okay, that was like the rocket of my career, getting the dream. Like, I got the dream. And, we hear, everybody you hear that's super famous and everything, like they're exceptions. Those are the exceptions. I mean, even Hollywood, those big stars, like, look at every extra in the back of every movie. Those are like the people in the background supporting. And you reminded me of my son's college essay. And it said in UGA, it said, you tell us why you're going to shine and why we're going to notice you at UGA. And he wrote, you're not going to notice me. I am not going to shine. He's like, because I'm the person in the back. I'm the person backstage that's helping the person that's helping somebody else shine. Because I don't want to be on stage. That's not who I am. I'm shy. I'm not the extrovert. I'm the introvert that's happy to support. So you are not going to notice me at UGA, but I'll be part of your student body, and I'll be there, and I'll show up at class, and I'll be a good student. But are you going to know who I am and know my name? I doubt it. And that was his essay. And I was like, that's brilliant, Noah. And he's a writer. Now, my son, that kid can write. And I've been begging him to write a book and help him self-publish it. And he's like, I don't want to sell myself. I don't want to market. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, well, let me do it.
Yeah,
I'll market.
I'll put my name on it.
Yeah. And I'm still trying to convince him to do that. But he's a behind-the-scenes guy. And he loves it. He loves it. And, I'm like you. I love being on stage. And I love being in front, and I love talking to the kids. And I still get that with being a substitute too. You're the new person. You're the like, oh, who are you? So you get that. I mean, I know what I'm doing with substituting.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, and it certainly is a very different conversation than we usually have here in the podcast, but we always have a different conversation when you come on, Michelle, and we want you back.
Well, I would love to come back, because I don't even know what will happen with me in the next 6 months or a year, and I appreciate you continuing to reach out to me and letting me be super honest and authentic and vulnerable.
Well, I think that is the perfect period on our conversation, except because there's still going to be people who want to buy your book. So tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Michelle Nelson-Schimdt.
Well, my books are all on Amazon. They are also on my website, and I have free shipping on my website as well, trying competing with Amazon. But if you buy my books on Amazon, you're likely still buying them from me. But it is MNS, as in Michelle Nelson-Schimdt, mnscreative.com. And if you Google What If Monster, you'll find my books.
We've had a really fascinating time talking to our guest tonight, Miss Michelle Nelson-Schimdt. Michelle, thanks so much for being with us.
As always, thank you. It was such a pleasure.
This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Adventures of Toby Baxter, Book 2, River Home for the Holidays. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read written by Tim Wright. River Home for the Holidays delivers a captivating blend of humor, danger, and inspiration. For lovers of fantasy with mythical creatures, this book is a must-read, promising a thrilling and heartwarming adventure. Dive into the enchanting world of River Home alongside Toby Baxter, and you won't be disappointed. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, great middle grade novel. You want to add this to your family library. The Adventures of Toby Baxter, Book 2, River Home for the Holidays, written by Tim Wright. are you ready to ignite a passion for reading in your students? Introducing bookandauthor.com, your gateway to literacy connections. With bookandauthor.com, connecting your school with talented authors of captivating kids' books has never been easier. Simply visit our user-friendly website and explore our extensive database of authors. Filter your search based on budget, genre, and availability. Discover the perfect match for your school and your students. But that's not all. With bookandauthor.com, you have the power to request a proposal. Let vetted authors come to you with their tailored ideas, ensuring an unforgettable literacy experience for your students. Don't wait any longer to inspire young minds through the magic of books. Visit bookandauthor.com today and open the door to a world of literacy connections. Bookandauthor.com, where literacy comes to life. Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. I'm really excited. We have a wonderful guest today. We're talking today about The Last Rose. It is part of the Sisters Ever After series. Please welcome to the show, Leah Cypess. Hey, Leah, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I'm delighted to have you on. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to talking about The Last Rose, but I'm also really interested speaking to you because you've had quite an interesting, long and winding road to get to this point in your career.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So tell us about The Last Rose, please.
Sure. So The Last Rose is the fourth book in the Sisters Ever After series, which is a series of books that are retellings of fairy tales told from the point of view of the forgotten younger sisters. So each book is, and they're for ages 8 to 12, each book is a standalone, different world, different characters. You can read them in any order. So the first book is Thornwood, and that's Sleeping Beauty told from the point of view of Sleeping Beauty's little sister. Then we have Glass Slippers, which is about Cinderella's third stepsister. The Piper's Promise, which is about the Pied Piper's little sister. And finally, The Last Rose, which is about Beauty's little sister, who, after her sister disappears into the Beast's castle, her little sister thinks obviously that there is something wrong with this, and she sets out to the castle to try to save her sister from the Beast.
This is really neat. I love retellings and modern retellings, or even old retellings of classic stories. I'm wondering, were you inspired to write this series because you're a little sister?
So the ironic thing is I am an oldest sister.
Okay.
And in fact, my daughter, who is the second sister, at one point looked at me and was like, how are you writing all these books from the point of view of younger sisters? You're an oldest. So I was like, yes, I am appropriating the little sister experience. But I have 3 daughters and I have 3 sisters. So I did my best. Nobody has complained yet that I haven't gotten it right.
Well, that's cool. We talk, we've heard over the years about the middle child and all those kind of stereotypes about the middle child. What is it? What are some of the things that you think are universal about that youngest sister, littlest sister experience?
Right. So I don't think there's anything universal just about the experience of being a little sister. And that's why I'm so excited that this is a 6-book series, because I can write a whole bunch of different types of relationships. So like the first book, Thornwood, has what many people would probably consider the most common or stereotypical younger sister experience where, she's Sleeping Beauty's little sister, and Sleeping Beauty is, gorgeous and famous and has this curse hanging over her head and, has this prince who came to save her. And her little sister is sort of in the background and in the shadows. But of course, in my retelling, the little sister ends up being the one who saves the day. But then in each story, I was able to tell a sort of different type. So in The Last Rose, for example, the two sisters have always been very tightly bound together. They have a father who is untrustworthy, who, essentially sold his oldest daughter to a beast. It's always been the two of them against the world. And now it's actually the younger sister who is setting off to save and protect her older sister. And in each book, I try to play with a different type of relationship, and not have it just be the same thing over and over. So that is what was for me one of the most exciting things about having this be a series.
Yeah. The first thing that jumps out into mind is like, this would be a great book for a mom or a dad of a girl to buy, and something that lots of girls would love, whether they're older sisters or younger sisters. But I'm thinking, let's expand this. How would how do you think a young guy, a little brother or older brother, might like this series?
So the third book, The Piper's Promise, is actually about a brother-sister relationship. The main character is always going to be a girl because that's baked into the concept for the series. It's sisters ever after, it's younger sisters. But in The Piper's Promise, the main character, the older sibling is actually a brother, the Pied Piper, who turns out to be a lot more complicated than, the evil Pied Piper who steals the children. It turns out that he has his own reasons for doing what he does that his sister is going to try to figure out. I think in general, all the stories, even though if you look at the covers, right, they're very much the marketing department decided we are going to market this for girls. That's very obvious. But they all have a lot of adventure and excitement in them. They all deal with fairies in a way that they're not like cute, cuddly fairies. They're mysterious and dangerous. So I actually think that boys would like this series as well.
Yeah. What is it about this age, this middle grade age, that you enjoy writing for?
So as a reader, and I read avidly, if I think about the books that really stuck with me that I, really love beyond all measure, so many of them are the books that I read when I was, in this age group, middle grade books that I read between the ages of 8 and 12. And I think this is the age where, my youngest daughter is in third grade right now. And I hear a lot from her teachers about how this is the grade where, kids stop reading in order to learn how to read, and they start reading in order to gain from what they're reading. So this is kind of the age where kids switch over from learning to read to reading for fun, for information, for whatever it is. So I feel like writing for this age group is really important because this is the age when kids are either going to start loving to read books or they're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked on the show a whole lot about, from kindergarten to pre-K through second grade, kids are learning to read. And after that, starting in third grade, they're reading to learn. And even more importantly, they're hopefully learning to love to read, because we all understand that, lifelong readers, there's so many advantages that kids have when they become lifelong readers. Do you have that in the back of your mind as you're writing that's like, hey, this might be the thing, this might be the book that starts a kid down, in a love affair with the written word?
So I don't think I have quite enough self-confidence, or sense of importance for that. I do write these books thinking very much about my readers. I'm supposed to read, I'm writing young adult or adult, where I'm writing primarily for myself, but also thinking about my audience. When I write middle grade, I'm really thinking about my audience. I'm thinking, what does my audience want to see in this book? What do they want to happen? What would disappoint them? What would scare them? What would they find to be a satisfying ending? So I do think a lot about how, a kid in my target age group would react when I'm writing in the book. Yeah. And hopefully that will lead to them loving the book and everything else you said. But there are tons of amazing middle grade books out there. So I'm not really going to think that it will be my book that spurs their love for reading, although it would be great if it was.
How do you, or do you do anything kind of consciously to connect with that middle grade audience to find out what it is that they're thinking about?
Sure. Well, my main trick is that I have a daughter who is exactly in this age group. And I read to her as I'm writing, not as I'm writing the book because I need a little more independence than that. But once I have some chapters basically set, I read them to her and I see how she reacts. And that is just, I'm lucky that I have her right there and I can read to her almost whenever I want. And I see her reactions and I will change the plot or the language or whatever based on what she finds confusing or what she finds upsetting or what she finds improbable.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, you've been writing yourself since way before this middle grade age. I think I read on your website you wrote your first story when you were in first grade.
Yes. I don't actually remember deciding to be a writer. I've wanted to be a writer for as long as I can remember. And I started submitting books to publishers when I was in high school, which thank goodness never got accepted. But, I've been in this for a long time.
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier on, you've had a really kind of long and winding road to becoming an author. You said you didn't remember, making that decision. I want to be an author and I'm going to start authoring now. You kind of went through a couple of, you studied biology in college and then you were an attorney in a big giant law firm. And how were you able to break away from that to be, start writing the books and make that your career?
All right. Well, so my earliest memory of telling someone I wanted to be a writer was when I was 8 years old, and I told my grandmother I want to be an author when I grow up. And my grandmother, who was an immigrant, said to me, "That is not a good idea. Authors don't make a lot of money."
Well, she's right.
So. Right. So that was, I guess, my first push toward, try to be practical at the same time. So I never gave up on wanting to be an author, but I always assumed that I would have to have a day job, and do something else where I could, have a steady income. So that was why, so I majored in biology, and I actually minored in journalism, and I had this idea that I would be a science writer. But after college, I actually decided that it would be better to separate the two things entirely and not try to kind of write stuff I didn't want to write, for money, and then write stuff that I do want to write, for my dream. I decided that actually I wanted my day job to be a job that didn't involve creative writing. So, when you graduate from college with a degree that you have nothing to do with, what do? You go to law school. So I went to law school. I worked as a lawyer, like you said, in a big giant firm for 2 years, and I discovered that law is not a day job that you could do, at least not law when you're working for a big firm. It's not a job that you can do while also writing on the side. You're lucky if you can eat and, sleep on the side. But back in those days, big giant law firms did pay a lot of money. So after working there for 2 years, I'd saved up enough money that I felt like I could give it a shot. And I could sort of work part-time in law. And I could, really spend most of my time writing. So that was what I did.
Yeah. And happily ever after since then, huh?
Yes. Well, again, my grandmother was not entirely wrong. And writing is not, a smooth, so it was 4 years after I quit law, that I finally got my first book contract. And I thought, well, this is it. I've made it. I got a book contract and now I will just publish a book a year for the rest of my life. But of course, the publishing world is not that easy. So there have been a lot of ups and downs. Right now, this series has been amazing to write, both because I love writing it and in terms of the stability. But I absolutely don't regret leaving law and working as an author.
Yeah.
I get to do what I love every day.
So The Last Rose is out, and I understand there's another 2 books coming out, and one's coming out fairly soon.
Yeah, the publisher decided to accelerate the schedule. So instead of a book a year, after the first 3 books, they decided that it would be a book every 6 months, which isn't exactly 6 months because the way publishing thinks about seasons is not necessarily the way the rest of the world thinks about seasons. But yes, the next book, Braided, which is about Rapunzel's little sister, is coming out in April. And then the 6th book, which is going to be The Little Mermaid, I don't have a date for it yet, but it will come out at some point after that.
Yeah. Well, this is really wonderful. And And that's it. 6 books in this series.
Yes.
Wonderful. What? Any idea of what will be the next middle grade projects you'll be working on?
Well, I hate to talk about projects that I'm working on that aren't under contract because, for every manuscript that I've had accepted by a publisher that has been made into a book, I on average have another 2 or 3 manuscripts where I wrote the whole thing and couldn't get anyone to agree to publish it. So I've learned through trial and error not to talk about future projects until I have a signed contract for them. And I do have some other projects in the works that I'm hopeful about that will be probably published after this series ends. But for now, I'm just going to, keep them secret.
Okay, that's fine. I hope that you won't keep secret some tips that you might have for young people who aspire to write stories and be an author themselves.
No, of course not. So my main thing that I will say is that even though, of course, the dream is to be published, and that was always my dream as well, it's not really worth it unless your heart is in the writing, unless the writing process is what you enjoy and you keep your joy in that. Which is not to say that you shouldn't submit things for publication. It's not to say that you shouldn't, think about the market, use critique groups and everything like that. But really, if you have to really enjoy the process of writing and at some level be writing for yourself first and for publication second.
Yeah. Very good advice. Very good advice. Hey, we should tell people where they can go to find out more about The Last Rose and everything else that they need to know about the Sisters Ever After series and find out more about you.
Sure. Well, the best place is my website, leahcypess.com. And as we discussed before the show opened, there's no R in Cypess. So it's, and that's the main place. I update my website myself and I keep it I try to keep on top of things. So, whenever there is news to be had, it will be on my website very shortly thereafter. So that's really the main place. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, which I use mainly to post book news and, nature pictures and also book recommendations. And both of those are just my name, Leah Cypess.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Last Rose. It is part of the Sisters Ever After series, great series of middle grade books by our guest, Leah Cypess. Leah, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Hey, quick question. Are you raising a reader? Are you ready to embark on a journey of imagination and adventure with your family? Then look no further than Dear Fam, the ultimate destination for family reading fun. Join the Dear Fam movement and unlock your child's love for reading with Dear Fam, the reading journal tracking app. Develop critical thinking skills. Set up reading goals with your child as they earn reading badges. Get notified when your child shares their reading journals. Share with family, friends, and teachers. Start your family's next reading adventure today with Dear Fam. That's spelled DEARFAM, where reading together means bonding forever. Dear Fam, now available on the App Store and at Google Play. Dear Fam. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, please be sure to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. We have relaunched our Drawing with Your Kids series. We have a special playlist on our YouTube homepage so you and your kids can learn how to draw some of the favorite characters that we have celebrated here on the podcast. We would also invite you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Check out our blog, download our free online magazine, use the contact button up at the top of the page to send us a message. Let us know what you love about the show. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the show. And you also will have access to every single one of our almost 2,000 episodes of Reading with Your Kids. Some amazing interviews, including 2 or 3 other interviews with our main guest tonight, Michelle Nelson-Schmidt. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our amazing guests and sponsors. I also want to thank my team. Where would I be without them? Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Skylar Strauss, Nick Warner, Kyoko Ito, Kayla Newland, Kristen Barrett, Sydney Swan, Hannah Rose. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of her support. But most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.